This is a story about a little girl who was left for dead in her own home.
We had a 2-year-old that was shot twice and lived.
If you could have seen her, you would have said there's no way that this child could possibly make it.
She would pull through and beat the odds, but would police be able to bring her assailant to justice?
Hello, I'm Dan Abrams, and welcome to Chasing Justice. This is a story of a crime that not even the police could believe. A little girl shot at close range. She stunned everyone with her will to live, and none more so than a detective who vowed to crack the case. Here's Hoda Kotb.
Erica's story began in a hardscrabble neighborhood in Louisville in this brick house on Wilson Avenue. A 2-year-old wild about Dora the Explorer, Erica lived here with her mom, Erin Harper. On May 18, 2006, police got a frantic 911 call. Detective Tom Barth and Officer Larry Riley rushed into the house and found a horrifying scene. A woman almost certainly dead on the floor.
Just see a big, like a pool of blood.
The officers had to step over the woman to get to the back room where, on the bed, they saw the little girl, motionless.
When I first seen her, I thought she was dead. Eventually, I touched her, and she pushed my hand and said, you know, leave me alone. She was alive.
Alive, but barely. The officers could see that the little girl had been shot in the head. She'd been left there for a long time.
She had very labored breathing, very labored breathing.
Have you ever seen anyone who was breathing like that who made it?
No, I have not.
There was no time to wait for an ambulance. The officers rushed the little girl into a squad car to get her to the ER. Steve Kelsey jumped behind the wheel and gunned it for the 3-mile trip to the hospital in downtown Louisville. Across town, another part of the story was unfolding inside this house. Harold Harper and his wife Judith were wondering why they couldn't reach their daughter Erin and their 2-year-old granddaughter Erica. Harold, a retired factory worker, and Judith, a homemaker, talked to their daughter nearly every day, so the silence was strange. Then the TV news flashed on.
First here at 7, some breaking news.
And said there had been a shooting down on Wilson Avenue where she lived. And we thought, oh my God.
He and Judith picked up Erin's oldest daughter, Ebony, and drove down to the house.
There was a whole bunch of people standing outside, and it was taped off, and it was a mess down there.
It wasn't long before Judith and Harold's worst fears were confirmed.
The jewelry she had on, they brought it to me. I knew it was Erin then.
Their daughter, Erin Harper, 42, was dead in the doorway. The loss of Erin, a mother of 4, was devastating. But now the family got more bad news. They learned baby Erica had been shot in the head.
Why in the name of God would somebody do that?
It was this man's job to find out.
Now, in your experience, how many times have there been babies who were victims?
There's never been a case I've worked where a baby's been shot.
Detective Rick Arnold knew this would be a high-profile case. He just didn't know it would be the case of a lifetime. A video camera rolled as Detective Arnold processed the crime scene, homing in on clues.
The first thing that immediately hit me was the Dora the Explorer pillow, and it had blood on it.
What was the emotion when you saw that?
Anger.
With 2 young kids of his own, this case had already hit Rick Arnold hard. On the spot, he made a promise to Erica's grandmother.
You said, we're going to find who did this.
Yes.
That's a lot to promise somebody, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
More leads came into focus. A bloody footprint, 3 big red soda cans, and 2 cigarette butts by the bed. Detective Arnold ordered DNA testing on the cigarettes and cans. The detective was also learning more about Erin.
She was the best mom. I just miss her so much. She was everything to me.
Erin worked at Churchill Downs as a hostess, meeting celebrities like actor Jason Priestley. But she had to go on disability because of MS and a painful inflammatory condition known as fibromyalgia. She often took prescription painkillers to manage her symptoms. But her parents were concerned by the crowd she sometimes ran with.
She was with some guys you weren't fond of?
That's right.
At the crime scene, Detective Arnold was searching for answers, combing the house for more clues.
Panning in on a closet that contains a safe.
Some contents apparently missing.
The first thing that popped in my head was some type of a robbery. And next to the drum is a cell phone. One of the first things we do is check cell phone records.
Phone records showed that Aaron received 2 phone calls in the hours before the shooting, both from a family friend, James Quisenberry, who had known Aaron for years.
Your menthol, let's see if I can do. Is that okay?
That's what I was talking.
Good.
Police brought him in to see if he had any information that could help the investigation.
One of the very last people to call her or talk to her by phone was you, which is why we want to talk to you.
It was me?
Mm-hmm.
Quisenberry provided some names for investigators to check out and repeatedly offered to assist police in any way he could.
Happy fan, whoever it is.
But would Quisenberry be a helper or a hindrance in the investigation of his friend's murder? Erica was now in the ICU, holding on for life. Her heartbroken grandparents and big sister stood daily vigil.
It was like a horror movie, really. I don't know who that was on that bed. That wasn't Erica.
Then, 4 days after she was shot, Erica, her breathing tube removed, woke up and started talking to her family. In the ICU, Erica was feisty and combative. Her brain was rebooting. Erica's condition was upgraded from critical to fair.
She looked real bad, but I never dwelled on she wasn't going to make it.
After nearly 2 weeks in the hospital, Erica was well enough to move to nearby Fraser Rehabilitation Institute. But the hard work was just beginning. The brain injury had damaged her ability to walk and talk. What had been second nature to her had to be relearned, running, talking back and forth, and just being a playful kid again. Erica's sister, who knew her best, was worried. Erica had lost sight in her right eye forever, and Ebony was afraid she'd never be her old self again.
She didn't run and play and talk as much. She was kind of quiet.
Back at the police station, Detective Arnold was trying to figure out his next move when his investigation caught a lucky break. A 75-year-old neatnik spotted some of Aaron's things in a rain-soaked ditch 3 miles from Aaron's house and phoned police. There were empty prescription pill bottles, credit card and ID cards, and personal papers, and something else that did not belong.
Tell me about what this thing is.
This is the Cadillac manual.
A Cadillac owner's manual. It stood out because it didn't seem to fit with the rest of the muddy mess.
I was able to find stuck all the way down in the binding of the book an automobile insurance card.
With a name.
With a name, most importantly.
Detective Arnold typed the name, a man's name, into his computer, and it spit out 15 matches. One of them lived in southern Indiana, just across the river from Louisville. Around 11 p.m., Rick called the man.
I asked him if he knows why his manual would have been in a drainage ditch in Louisville, Kentucky.
And what did he tell you?
He says, I don't know, but my car was broken into at my work last week.
His Cadillac. The break-in happened on the night of May 17th, just a few hours before Aaron Harper was found dead.
I asked him, where do you work? And he said he's a pharmacist at a Walgreens. And bells and whistles go off in my head. He works in a drugstore where they sell prescription drugs.
Detective Arnold now had a working theory, and it went like this. Someone broke into a shiny Cadillac parked outside an Indiana Walgreens. The car happened to belong to the store's pharmacist. For no apparent reason, the thief grabbed the owner's manual from the glove compartment and tossed it into his own car. He then went to Aaron's house, where she and Erica were shot, and Aaron's prescription pills and credit cards were stolen. Then, according to Rick's theory, the person rushed away from the house, threw the pill bottles and credit cards into the getaway car, and drove off. A few miles away, whoever was in the car got rid of the hot property, tossing Aaron's empty pill bottles and credit cards out of the window, along with the Cadillac manual. And that's how everything ended up together in the drainage ditch. Rick asked if the pharmacist knew who broke into his car.
He said, I don't know for sure, but I have a pretty good idea.
The pharmacist remembered, and store security cameras confirmed that a man in a baseball cap and another man came into the Walgreens at 9:30 p.m. on May the 17th, just hours before Aaron was shot.
And he said they didn't look like they were regular shoppers at our Walgreens.
Okay.
He said most of our prescription customers are regular customers. He went on to tell me that they had come back to the pharmacy and tried to obtain prescriptions using bogus names.
Over and over, Detective Arnold stared at the grainy Walgreens tape. The man in the baseball cap looked familiar.
One person sure looks like Quisenberry.
As in James Quisenberry, Aaron's family friend who phoned her minutes before the murder. Earlier, he told the detective how much he wanted to help the investigation. Rick wasn't buying any of it now. Quisenberry had become a prime suspect, though Rick wasn't ready to arrest him. Not yet. Not until he had the other man. But that wouldn't be easy. Just 27 days after being shot in the head, Erica was released from rehab and met Officer Kelsey and her other rescuers.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
It was nothing short of a miracle.
Just great to have her there, you know, and to get her home from the hospital.
Grandparents Judith and Harold Harper, both 69, were full-time parents again.
I agreed from the first day that I would take care of her, not knowing what kind of shape she was going to be in, not knowing what mental state she'd be in.
Erica's father had never been a big part of her life, so a court granted Judith and Harold full custody of Erica and her baby sister.
I love those little kids.
Together, they gave Erica a secure home. Day by day, she was gaining strength. But things were not normal.
She was scared when it rained, when it thundered outside.
Because anything that sounded like gunshots.
Yeah.
But there was something else that terrified Erica, and it was harder to understand.
They was the guy that come in the daycare to pick his child up and had braids in his hair. And Erica started running and crying to the teacher and said, "Don't let him hurt me."
Judith told Detective Arnold about Erica's new fear, men with braids. And there, on the Walgreens video, Detective Arnold saw it. The man coming in with James Quisenberry, the mystery man, had braids. But the image was still too fuzzy to figure out. Rick circulated a freeze frame of the man and hoped someone could identify him. Then he waited. 8 months later, Rick got some promising news. A detective thought he recognized the Walgreens guy from another shooting.
And I might want to check him out.
His name, Kenneth Williams. Rick compared several Williams mugshots with the Walgreens video. And you think, boom, we've got our guy.
And I think it's probably him, but there again, the picture in the video is not real good. But I started focusing in on him at that point.
Then Rick's investigation got lucky again. An unlikely witness came forward with information about that same Kenneth Williams and the night Erica and her mom were shot. But the witness, Rashawn Turner, was questionable. He was charged with murder himself, for which he'd later plead guilty to manslaughter, and he was also gravely wounded in a shooting. Weeks later, Turner's health improved enough to talk to Rick Arnold.
James, Kenneth Williams. They supposedly had a lick on the woman.
What does that mean?
Now, that's slang term for a robbery.
Robbery that quickly escalated to murder. Prosecutor John Heck.
He knew things he couldn't have known. He knew things that weren't in the media.
5 days after interviewing Turner, Detective Arnold was ready to bring in Quisenberry and Williams for some tough questioning.
I was a little apprehensive, but not nervous. No butterflies, just because it's something I had planned on and prepared for such a long time.
You were ready.
I was ready.
15 months after the shootings, Quisenberry and Williams voluntarily came down to headquarters. Each knew the other was there. As a tactic, Detective Arnold even walked Williams past a closed-circuit monitor where he could see Quisenberry in an interview room.
I wanted them both to understand that if they didn't tell us the truth, the other guy may be.
Detective Arnold needed both suspects to admit they were in the house when the shootings went down. That would back up murder charges against both of them, no matter who pulled the trigger. Quisenberry was interviewed first. He said he knew nothing about the crime. But as the interrogation wore on, he started blaming the man in the other room.
I want you to tell me why he killed her and how he did it.
I wasn't there, but I know he didn't.
But Detective Arnold knew something Quisenberry did not. After Quisenberry's first interview, Rick had scooped up his smoked-down Marlboros for DNA testing. The results were now back, and bingo, they matched a cigarette butt from the crime scene.
He claims he wasn't there, but you got DNA that puts him there.
And I collected those cigarette butts, and one of those has your DNA on it.
One has my DNA.
One of them has your DNA. That's exactly right. See, that's what I'm saying. You were in that house, and that's what I want to know about.
How does he react to being sort of cornered, caught in a lie?
He was backtracking. He was getting scared.
I mean, I never told you that I wasn't.
I know. That's my point.
I'd be over all the time. That's what I'm saying.
Now, Quisenberry was admitting he had visited his friend Aaron that day, but he insisted he'd left before anyone was shot. Rick sensed that Quisenberry and his story were crumbling, so he went for the jugular, demanding he come clean.
I wonder what you saw inside that house.
And it worked.
I saw him going there, and I was behind him. Pow, 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 pow. I heard more gunshots.
That becomes the most important thing he says in the whole statement.
Detective Arnold now had admission number one. Now it was time to interrogate Williams, and he proved to be a tougher nut to crack.
First impressions of him.
He's hardcore. He's hardcore to the max.
I did not shoot the lady. I did not do nothing to her. I her baby.
He also denied everything and blamed the man in the other room, Quisenberry.
Did he have a gun?
Yes.
What color was it?
Black.
Williams kept insisting he was not even in the house, but Rick needed to get him inside, as he had with Quisenberry.
I wanted him in the house, not outside by a car, not down the street at the stop sign.
Detective Arnold saw an opening and pounced.
After I heard the gunshot, I ran in there to see what was going on.
I'm in the back room.
Rick had him right where he wanted, inside the house. And none too soon.
You got an attorney now.
An attorney who immediately stopped the interview.
Just under the wire and just in the nick of time.
Detective Arnold placed Williams and Quisenberry under arrest, and then he wasted no time making the one phone call he had waited 15 months to make to Erica's grandmother.
It was just a relief. I'd promised Judy Harper, on May the 18th of 2006 that I would get those answers, and now we had them.
What'd you think when they told you?
Well, just relieved. I had confidence that they would find him sooner or later because they couldn't get away with it forever.
Williams and Quisenberry would stand trial for the murder of Aaron and the attempted murder of Erica. An eye for an eye, the death penalty hung over both of them.
How you doing?
On the carousel of life in Louisville, it's what everyone's been asking. How's Erica, the miracle baby, doing?
How you doing?
But through it all, other questions swirled too. What happened in the house on Wilson Avenue? And would the men involved in the shootings pay for their crimes?
Okay, we are on the record.
Those answers would come 3 years later, April 2009, in a Louisville courtroom where James Quisenberry and Kenneth Williams stood trial for the murder of Aaron Harper and the attempted murder of little Erica. Co-prosecutor Mark Baker maintained that the defendants came to steal Aaron's pills and money, but then Williams changed the plan after Aaron fought back, according to key witness Rashawn Turner.
Well, he told me he snatched the purse from her, but she wouldn't let go of her purse. And he shot her.
Turner's testimony also helped fill in another piece of the puzzle: why Quisenberry and Williams were in the house that night. It appears that after Aaron became too ill to work, she found a way to supplement her income, selling her prescription medicine. She had invited her friend Quisenberry to buy pills before, but this time the deal deteriorated into robbery and ultimately murder when Williams came along with his gun.
I had no idea that they would go in the house and kill you over a bottle of pills.
The trial took just 1 week. Quisenberry would be convicted of manslaughter and a maximum 45 years in prison. As for Williams,
we, the jury, find the defendant, Kenneth Williams,
guilty of murder, and then a life sentence with no possibility of parole, spared the death penalty only because one holdout juror would not vote for it. Out of the tragedy, the Harper family had pulled together. With her grandparents as her guiding lights, Erica's future now looks bright.
They call you the miracle baby. The miracle baby. Why do they call you that?
I'm the special girl.
Their prayers answered. Judith and Harold are raising a happy-go-lucky first grader who still loves Dora, but also now soccer, SpongeBob, and bike riding. When you look at Erica, do you see any of your mom in Erica?
Yes.
What parts?
The main thing I see is her loud mouth.
Is that right?
Yes, Erica's loud and she's got the raspy voice just like my mom had.
Where is your mom right now?
Up in heaven.
Do you think about her a lot?
Think about her coming down.
And what happens when she comes down?
She'll still be my mama.
That's all for this edition of Chasing Justice. For Investigation Discovery, I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.